So we're just going to use the mic so that. Hi. We're making it a fireside chat with no fire.
Did you bring the fire?
BYOF. Okay, so you guys got a chance to see. I'm only using this because they're recording. To see how HopeX kind of evolved. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. It is a live speaker event. We didn't want to say this in front of the whole room, but it's a TEDx style event. It's called HopeX because it was our 10-year anniversary when we did it, and also so people could kind of know what we were talking about when we put it out there into the universe. And it's just stuck, partially because we have these great letters, which, by the way, our local makerspace made for us out of really light styrofoam that they've never traveled, but they have now. So I'm going to pass it to, so I'm Laura Hamilton, Executive Director of Beacon of Hope. Heather Zippel is she started as our chair of this event, and now she's our development chair and kind of is running a lot of the fundraising from a board perspective. And you all know Lynchburg McQueen, she's the other half of it.
So in order to host your own HopeX event, the first thing you do is you get a lot of people who are smarter than you on a committee and who are energized by it. So developing a committee for the event involves finding people who are good at communication and marketing, finding someone who has amazing organizational skills and can take care of things like hospitality and catering. And then thirdly, a committee of people who will find speakers for you. And I think that is probably your most important committee, because the other things you can take care of on your own if you have to. We've been very fortunate in that Laura's been able to use a lot of her connections to find us speakers. And the one thing I think is important to remember about finding a speaker is you don't have to pay a speaker. There are so many people who have a story to tell, and just no one has ever asked them to tell it. So I think our first year, none of our speakers had, I guess maybe Walter had been telling his story a little bit, but none of them really had told their story before, and they all did a great job. And then you pick a theme, and that's a really easy one because there are so many themes out there. And kind of in the spirit of a TED Talk, when we give our theme to our speakers, we allow them a lot of leeway in what direction they want to go in. So if they want to take the power of connection and talk about AI, if they want to take the power of connection and then talk about what it means to be on a sports team and how you connect people that way, it's up to them. Oh, there we are.
There they are. Yeah, that was great. So when we first started in 2022 doing this, the theme was really important. And this theme that we had in 2022 really has been woven through all of the kind of parts of this. And it was the power of education to transform a life, which is what we're all about. It was the easiest thing we could talk about. For us, it was about the lives we've transformed over the last 10 years. And that's a pretty narrow theme as you think about it. I mean, you have a million things you can talk about, but you're generally going to see, especially with the students that we serve and the folks that we're working with, you're going to see, how I overcame, how I persevered, how my life could have been different had I not been given this, or had I not had this opportunity to do what I was doing. The second year in themes, we'll get to that. So in the second year of themes, we did the power in finding your why. And that was driven by our speaker. So we had met with Simon Sinek a couple of years ago. Are you guys familiar with Simon? He's like this, he's kind of you should Google him. He's got a really great stuff, but he's the power in finding your why is his jam. He's out of New York. We met with him as a team, and he was like, yeah, I'll come back and do things for Lynchburg later. And, he charges like $150,000 to do a speaking gig. So not in our budget, but he was cool enough to do a video intro, which is really like, it gave this huge amount of validity because, people kind of know who he is. So that was cool. And it's the only time we've ever had a video feed into the event. It's just usually live speakers. And then this third year, we're using the power of connectivity, the exponential power of connectivity, because we're starting to see our students, and it's all designed on how our programming is evolving. So we're starting to see our students graduate, and they're looking for our help in the connectivity realm, and we see some students with capital that other students don't have. So it's about sort of the power of connecting with all those folks around you. So that's kind of what we're looking at for this coming March. The speaker slate, I think, is the most fun part of this process, and some of it does happen organically. Ours is adults and students, and by students I mean like some are still in their college journeys, but most of them are recent outs, just doing their big lives, within 3 or 4 or 5 years of graduation. And we had one last year who was just out, who had just graduated. So it's really important for us. It's really an important moment to showcase their journeys, just like what you saw Rashid and some of the students speaking. The adult speakers in a traditional TED style event, you're like 18 minutes. That's what adults do, and it's really prescribed. If you've ever looked at doing one, it's insane. You have to have someone in your town. Yeah, I mean, it's a process, And so when we first looked at it, we were like, not going to happen for 2 years if you went through the process that they look for. We were like, it's just do our own thing. And so our speakers are 12 to 15 minutes for the adults, and the students are in the 5-minute range, which is hard for a student, hard to trim down what you want to say and 5 minutes to stay on theme. So we intersperse that speaker slate in between sort of and you kind of saw it in the clips yesterday, but it is such the production value of what we're doing. It's not that you saw a micro version, but we have a live band that walk on and walk off music. It's like their jazz band. It's really cool. There's an intermission in the middle. It feels like New York and Lynchburg. The lighting is beautiful. The stage is our big letters and a big yellow rug. All of that is part of the jam. But as you weave together your speakers, I mean, you guys are probably like we are. We have a list of 30 kids, 40 kids that we could pick from. And so we've got that running list right now that we're like, okay, well, who's feeling connectivity right now? Who can we use to have that conversation? Who's a power of education kind of? And I mean, you can kind of talk to some student moments in that too.
Sure. I mean, I think Laura said it. It's really those relationships that we have with our students, to be able to still be in their worlds and recognize what's going on and having those conversations and saying, okay, this is our theme for this year. We know Rashid will be a great student to bring for this particular topic, or a number of other students. And I think what's the most special part about HopeX, it's really not the adult speakers. It's the student speakers that people left feeling energized and excited about. And we've had some major speakers this past year. We had Leland Melvin, who is a hometown hero for Lynchburg, but he's a big deal out in the world. He is the only person who has played in the NFL and been in space. And everybody geeked out for him, but they were also geeking out for the 4 students who we had speaking. So they felt like, celebrities for the day. Yeah, and just weaving the stories together, and we have a slide later. We coach. We go over the presentations and coach them through to be their most authentic and powerful selves. And like Laura said, they're not coming to the table having shared their story before necessarily, and so it's just encouraging them to get in and do it. There's one speaker we had last year who Laura spent a lot of time with her over her 4 years in college, 4+ years in college, very shy, but also in the theater. And she came out and she killed it. And that's what's most exciting, is to see them come out and flourish in those spaces. And then you have all the people from the community saying, wow, these students are amazing. We're like, yes, these are our collective students, this community, and they are amazing. And this opportunity really just is an opportunity to shine a light on their great story. So different from, just being able to graduate and everybody goes off into the world and they do their big thing. This is an opportunity to showcase what's happening in our city. And if you think about the promise, we want people to come and choose our city to keep the economy strong and do something effective with it. I want to jump into tackling the logistics. I mean, this is a major production. much bigger than what you saw yesterday. And it takes literally every person on our team to pull off all of those logistics. So for you, your team, your committee, it can't just be you. Yeah, but just kind of thinking through all the things, what the audience experience is going to be. And also, I will say, your first doesn't have to be as big a production. You have to think about what's going to work for your particular community. Is it going to be having it in a high school auditorium versus a theater in your city? So it all depends, but it's just sitting down, and we have a guide that we'll give you, and happy to talk with you all about all the behind the scenes logistics. But without these two brains, Heather over here and Macy over here, our director of operations, it would be interesting. You want to talk about?
One of the things that we're blessed with in Lynchburg is we were able to partner with our local historic theater. And so the first time we did this, we showed up and we said, hey, can you guys just do some kind of backdrop for us? And we showed up in that big, beautiful blue screen. I don't know if you remember it from yesterday, with all of the, abstract swirlies, and the band was set up. And so they bought into it, right? They really wanted to support us. So we were not responsible for audio. We weren't responsible for all of those little pieces because we had no idea. We're like, we don't know how to do that. We know how to give you a speaker, but how do you put together a production? And if you're doing it on a smaller scale, I would suggest partnering like with a local high school drama department, or find someone who has that expertise, so you're not put in the position where you have to try to figure that out. Because we don't know anything. Yeah.
I think, there it is. I think one of the cool things, and just really quick on weaving your speakers together, you don't have to have speakers who stand or sit on a stool. Like, sometimes when you're watching, sometimes I'll go down the rabbit trail. I'm watching TED Talks, and you got sort of the same look where the person's like kind of walking around on stage and they're doing their thing. Like ours, we ended up with the first year, and this is one of my favorite segments that we did. The first year was the power of education to transform a life. And we had two fellas who are in their 70s. And when the city of Lynchburg integrated, there's a black young man and a black woman who went together, and they integrated our high schools. And so one of those, we have since lost the woman who did it, but the man's name is Owen Cardwell. And they had all gone to the segregated black high school, Dunbar High School. And then when they integrated EC Glass, Owen went, and then his buddy who had grown up with him, Hank, stayed. And he stayed in the segregated high school, and they'd never talked about this. I mean, you had very small numbers integrating at a time, and we brought him on stage, and I got to do this facilitated dialogue where we're sitting in chairs, and it was I'm telling you, it was like one of the coolest things. And we'd practiced, and both of them are in their 70s, so they tend to love to go off on the stories, and you're like, oh dear God, because when they start going, they could go for a while. But everybody sort of kept it in check, and it was this really beautiful moment of having this three-way conversation, which was very different than the student who was just up on stage 10 minutes earlier, sitting on a stool, telling his story with all the courage you could possibly muster. And then you have the young woman come out who had the rose in her hair yesterday and do this piece of spoken word. And then we have an intermission. And then you have this group come out who does an Harambe for Freedom School. And that was really cool. So what we were trying to do with this night is that making it slightly unpredictable. You're coming to hear people's stories, and everybody's got a different story, but it needs to have some meat to it. You just don't, nobody's going to want to come into the room and see 8 different people on a stool or doing the walk or a story is a story, but looking at different ways to tell the story, I think, is the most important thing I can tell you. What else we got? I think we got that. Oh, yeah. So there's Hank and Owen. We can, yeah.
One of the resources that you have for speakers when you're looking for someone that has subject matter expertise is go to your local colleges and universities. Go to your community college where you partner with someone. For an example, that was just a great presentation on isolation and feeling like you belong, he would have been a great speaker if he could have tied it into some personal stories or some stories from some of the human beings that he's worked with. And so you'll see on the bottom left, that's Valerie Gregory, and she came to us from the University of Virginia, and then Hank and Owen and some of the kids and others.
The guy on the bottom, the guy in the bottom middle, his name is Kanan Townsend. And he actually is sort of the reason we did HopeX in a lot of ways. Like, we had gone to go visit. He works at the Mary Moton Museum, which is in Farmville, Virginia. And if any of you all know the story of Prince Edward County, rather than integrate, they shut down their public schools for 5 years. And so there were students who were, his dad was in first grade when the school shut down. And when they started up again, his age was, 12 or 13. He's supposed to be going into junior high. And he had the education of a first grader. And so we look at, part of it was to inspire some really tough conversations in our community to say, everybody's gotten really comfortable with this idea that we all have access to the same level of education. But here's what happens when a community doesn't allow it. And his story, he's the director of education at this museum, but he was a Mr. and call me Mr. Like, he has done these really cool, and he's young. He's like, early 30s. And so his conversation was like, get up and stop being complacent in this moment. And everyone in the room was like, oh my God, it was. So yeah, it was there. That first HopeX was so full of really uncomfortable, kind of powerful messages interspersed with really cool moments from these young people who are telling their story to say, holy crap, here's where we are. And then, oh, look at this young person persevering. Okay, let's call attention to this. And I just felt like we were kind of all over the ether in that conversation, but somehow it so beautifully came together.
I just want to add one thing about the students. These are not sob stories, and they're not sharing all of their tragedies and difficulties and all these things. It's where they are now and how they have grown, and they talk about some of those things, but it's really about their successes and what's happening in their worlds now. And the student on the top right, Azariah Cox, he was one of our very first scholarship recipients, and he, as you can see, has that camera in that picture. He has taken photos for the Smithsonian. He's been in Vogue, done some really good things. And the great thing to say is, this kid has come out of Lynchburg, Virginia, okay? And he has made it big. And so it's encouraging. We have students in the audience. We have discounted tickets for our school system faculty and staff, but we also have donated tickets for students to be in the room to hear these stories. And the young lady on the top right, you're fine. She started her own nonprofit. So they're just doing really, really amazing things, and we just want them to have the opportunity to tell their stories. You can go ahead. So we talked a little bit about coaching the speakers, and it's being intentional about knowing what they're saying so that we can weave the story and make sure that the production itself feels smooth and makes sense and is not boring to those who are in the audience.
It starts really with when we ask people. We've never had anybody really tell us no when we've come to ask them. And we ask them, we're like, okay, write 650 words, which they're all familiar with because coming up, write your story about access to education in 650 words because that's about 5 minutes, and then give it to us. And then we look it over and we do some editing and we do some theme stuff, and then we do Zooms with them because half the time they're not in Lynchburg anymore. That's because the students are easy. The adults are a lot harder. And I mean a lot harder. Yeah, you can. Yeah. You can. So I would say, in the production.
So when you're dealing with adults, there's a certain amount of respect that you have because you've asked this person to come tell their story. And unless they're asking you I need help, I've never done any public speaking before, there's a lot of assumptions that are made. And we have been fortunate that every single person that has stood up to tell their story has done it, and they've done it very, very well. But we always have that little it's dress rehearsal the day of the production, and we're like, right? But they do a great job. The one thing, however, that has been a challenge is we had one speaker who spoke for 20... 40. It was 40 minutes. he spoke for 40 minutes. And literally, we tried to get the band at one point to do walk-off music, and he turned and he looked at the band and he said, "I'm not done." And so our entire production was already behind, and then we were an extra 20 minutes behind. So people who had come to our pre-party event had been with us at the end of the night for 6 hours. Like, it was just disappointing. So what we've learned from that, because there's always an opportunity to learn, is that when we have the discussion with our speakers prior to the event, what we do is we say, look, it is really important for us to stay on schedule. So there's going to be a clock on the stage, an iPad that's sitting there showing you how much time you have left. If you see the red banner going off or the red flashlight going off on stage left or stage right, that means that you've hit your time. If the band starts playing, we kindly ask you to walk away and have the discussion beforehand rather than be presented with it when it happens. So that's an example of the run of show. This is a really important piece Laura put together for us. So you have to time everything out, right? So you have to say the MC is going to talk for a minute and a half when they're introducing a speaker. The speaker's walkout time is going to be about 30 seconds because the band's going to play and it's going to take them time to get to the mic. And if you do that, then when you figure out the entire evening, you'll say, well, this show should run 2 hours and 6 minutes, including an intermission. Should, quote unquote. And you always want to have a run of show that is slightly less than what your target is, because in some way, shape, or form, you're going to run long.
So that's what it looks like. And the theater's really beautiful. It's super historic. This is our ABC News anchor in town, and I would highly suggest if you do this, you need to get your person. They're great. He's a little bit feral. Like, he would kind of do some fun little add-ons, but they went a little bit long. But he did a ton of pre-show socials for us, and he recorded some cool things in his studio, and it was all over. So people, they have this in small towns, your ABC News or whatever, NBC News anchor is going to have a huge following. So we had all kinds of sort of interesting people interested in the event because they were big Mark Spain fans, This is a really big part. No, you go.
Okay. So marketing and advertising your event, the last thing you want to do is ask these people and these kids to say, come tell your story. We really want you to come tell your story because we want to promote what we do in a promise program, and then to have empty seats, right? Like, most of the adult speakers are coming, for free. They're donating their time. They've prepared all of this. And so what we try to do is we obviously use word of mouth. We've used billboards in the past, and we feel like that's been helpful. We have a social media campaign. Macy takes care of a lot of our social media, and she's done a really nice job with that. And then we also want the students who are currently in our high schools, as well as their educators, to be able to come and listen to this so they can get really more and more excited about Beacon of Hope and what they're doing. So we give them discounted tickets, and then we target certain audiences. So this year, we have someone from the military coming in, and my plan is to go to any of the ROTCs and say, hey, we'll give your kids some free tickets. We have a physician who used to play in the NFL. I think he's a Liberty graduate. So we'll go to the local university and we'll say, hey, this graduate of Liberty is coming, and we would love for you to be able to send some people to get the seats for us. Or maybe you could sponsor some of those tickets and get them in the seats.
So you'll see some of this. I know we're about to run out of time. So we want to save time for questions. But we recorded the whole thing, which is how you guys got to see it. So we paid somebody to do that and then to cut it up into chunks, because everybody who's speaking wants to use that. Like, if you're going to be up there and doing this and this beautifully thing, you want to be able to use it. So we did have to do some of that. We added a reception. We did a whole bunch of, we went to some other of our nonprofit friends saying, we know y'all don't have any money to buy tickets. We've got a sponsor who can do this. Get your people there. Because at that point it was more important to have the people there than, and it is a fundraiser, but it's so much more than that. It's such a different kind of fundraiser that the production cost of it is not, it's a cheap thing to pull off if you're not having to pay speakers.
Can I speak to that for just a second? Yeah. So I think the biggest piece of HopeX is you've heard over and over again how the state of Tennessee has embraced the Promise program. Like it's just ingrained in them at this point. So HopeX is trying to do that to our community. We are trying to get Lynchburg to embrace our Promise program such that it's just what we do. It's part of it, right? And when they came out of the last 2 speaker series, they were just really excited. They were like, wow, this is amazing. Your kids are amazing. So I think that's the key. And if you make money and it's a fundraiser, great. And you can. But the first year we went into it, we're like, if we break even, that's great. That's all we really want to do.
Yeah, we're happy. That's Simon Sinek. This is some of the media that it looks like you'll recognize. Chrissy and John, they came to talk about the power in finding your why. That's our astronaut. He's amazing. He wore his flight suit, which did not suck even a little bit. It was really cool to see him in that. This is last year's speakers, and we can go. And look at Chrissy and her great shoes. And so she had this great, some of our speakers will throw pictures up, no slides. Like, we don't want any slides, but it's nice to have the pictures rolling. For Azariah, the photographer with the camera out front, his was a rolling of all of his, like he's done stuff for BET, he's done stuff for Vogue. So all of his, like, he worked for Rico Nasty. So he had all these really cool, like super amazing photographs scrolling behind him while he's telling his story. And people, it's really, we have a guy last year, Philip, who's a fashion designer in Atlanta now, and he was like showing his fashion design stuff. I mean, it was really just keeping it real, keeping it accessible, making it less. Let's see. Is that okay? Yeah. Here.
There's a next slide. We hope that you can come and see it in person. We do have a QR code for those of you who are in here. I'll pull it up on my phone and not up on the screen. It's not in the presentation, so that you can get the full guide, and then just reach out as you have questions about putting on your own HopeX. You can see, listen, those letters are just everything. They make the event. So we just want to open it up for questions that you might have in the time that we have left.
So in the expansion of this, what's your vision? Like, well, sharing, like, oh, go do this too.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're totally. I mean, this is a community of practice. Like, we're all here learning from each other. We did not create this. We had a little knockoff from some famous, already live speaker series. So we just want to share with y'all how we did it, so you can do it yourselves. There's a playbook. Do we want to go pull up that QR code over there? Okay, yeah, there's not many of us. So there's a playbook that we've helped with. This is just a slide version of that, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. We're happy for you to ask us questions. Rosie came down last year and loved it, and she was like, this is something that Promise communities should be doing. Yeah. Sort of jam. Like, we're all doing these cool. I would love that.
But also I was thinking, there's a lot of funding, at least in our area, around student voice projects that we're involved with. And so my idea was, like, how do I incorporate this to the student voice projects instead of it being a standalone, like, research, like, where it actually is action behind it.
That would be incredible. And have students be part of the production.
Like student research hours.
Yeah. That we should talk. I mean, it really is just for us. It just started with a way so people could hear our students' voices, and not in a way that's like, like in a way that's empowering. Not, oh wow, you had a tough life. Like that was tough. I mean, it's so empowering. It's you leave. The whole mission, the whole thing was, how do we make people leave uncomfortable, but also empowered, also driven to go do something. And every year somehow it's kind of worked. I don't know how.
And to get to the point where we could actually pay the panelists would be kind of nice, because we all know how expensive this is. And, like, even for our conferences, there's people like Ryan that charge like $50 to come speak. For me, it's kind of like, how do we find our local heroes? And how do we lift their voices? And then, like, this year we gave all our student panelists $500 scholarships.
Yes, perfect.
That went straight to them.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Here's your honorarium, your little scholarship honorarium for, yeah.
So, I mean, I see this, and I see so much potential, not only in it, like, uplifting our student voices and building community around it. But even like there's students that want to do this professionally, and this could be their first gig.
Yeah.
Right? Like to build skill sets, get them trained, like connect them.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, no, I love it. Great job.
You had a question.
Yeah, I was just curious, how often do you do this, and where does the revenue go? Does it go to support services, or does it go back into the next quarter?
We use sponsors to sponsor the cost of the event. So you'll see in like some of the marketing materials back there that like our hospital system, some of these folks sponsor the event. So then all the ticket money becomes gravy for our programming. So it goes directly back into our scholarships, to the programming, to all of that. And it's important that we say that. And there, we definitely throw the QR code up. And if you're feeling called to donate, don't be afraid. Get your wallets out. But there really hasn't ever been. I mean, it doesn't operate. I know there's a way to do it, and I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. But if I felt like during the last two that we've done, that it would cheapen it for me to come out and be like, okay, you've heard all these amazing students and folks talk about it. You know, now shell out the dough. You know, that's not the point. The point is to highlight these amazing people, and hopefully it'll plant a seed, and hopefully people will keep giving, and that's the whole idea. But my development folks and the board are like, get out there and ask for the money in the moment. Totally. We've done it once a year. Yep. So we started in March 22, did it again in March 23, and we'll do it again in March 24. Yeah. And until we run out of speakers, we'll probably keep doing it. But if you think about your own community, I think we're learning, we've got a nice list of every year. I'm like, oh my God, put them on HopeX 25. Let's add them to the rolling list of, your students start doing interesting things that are fun to talk about, that are different. You can go to your high schools, you can go to your colleges, wherever your Promise program is doing stuff. And we've been going to our nonprofit friends to be like, who's doing great things, our college friends, our board, who do you know? If we're talking about connectivity, or we're talking about the power in building a team, or we're talking about education, whatever the theme that we come up with. And sometimes we don't have one. Sometimes we're like, all right, here's the two speakers we have. Let's create a theme around the people who've committed. You kind of a general theme, but you can pull it together. We do ask that our local boutique hotels, they give us super discounted rates. So whoever comes gets put up in like really nice accommodations, and we'll pay for their plane ticket or their gas. But that's it. Feed you while you're there, give you a lot of love, take you on a tour of our city, and that's like the extent of it. Jamal. I'm sorry. Come up. You're a speaker. Oh, Jamie. Yeah, Jamie, I'm sorry.
I heard Jay, and I was like, huh?
Jamie, come talk about yourself. If y'all are looking for speakers, Jamie has some good ideas.
I didn't know I was going to be on a spot like this. I know. But I do want to say thank you, Laura, Lidra, and the HopeX team for providing the opportunity for me yesterday to speak. It's ironic. I called my friend yesterday. As soon as I got back to the hotel, I'm like, yo, bro, I was just talking about how I wanted to be on a TED Talk, and I was on there. And it's just funny because as I was thinking about it last night, and that's why I came back just today to see what is the opportunity to take this back to my hometown, to be able to highlight some of the nonprofits, some of the high schools, things of that nature, to be able to get the youth. I consider myself a youth, but like the high schoolers, the young college students, things of that nature, for them to be able to, like you said, Ida, this may be a career path for some people that love to just publicly speak. So it's a matter of, okay, how do we get them the opportunities the same way I got it? And if anyone in the room is looking for a speaker, please feel free to reach out. I do have I have a virtual card and a physical copy, because I know some people are traditional and then some people are, new age. So I try to stay hip to the times. But yes, I do have a liking, or a keen, if you will, to just speaking about myself. That's why, as I mentioned, when Daphne reached out to me stating that, they needed a speaker, I'm like, I'm working. I get to travel. Never been to Tennessee. All those things, and it was just a cherry on top for me to be able to speak about myself, my authentic experience, and be able to share that with Tennessee and everybody else that was in the room. But like I said, if there's any opportunities for me to continue to travel and continue to tell my story, please feel free to reach out, and I'll be going around with business cards. So thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're here. Y'all need